Recording. Here we go.
Hey everyone, welcome in. Give it
Good
just
afternoon.
another couple seconds for people to come in. All right, guys, I'm really excited for what we have planned today. We've been working on this for a little while at the VX Group, and both internally and with some of our partners. So I'm just super excited to run through this today. And with that said, just while we give a few people a couple extra seconds to trickle in, I'll just do some quick introductions. For those who don't know me, my name is Jacob Kamhai. I'm the VP of Growth and Revenue at the VX Group. Actually was at the VX Group a couple years ago. Left and worked at a high growth SaaS company for 4 years, leading out growth and marketing for a company called Property Radar, and now back at the VX Group for the last couple months. Super excited to be back. We're up to some incredible things here, and just couldn't be more excited.
I believe they call that the prodigal son, Jacob. So glad to have you back. And there's some obviously overlaps within lower mid-market B2B businesses and the world that Jacob's come from as well. So really excited for a productive session today. I'm David Tisdale, president of the VX Group. Jacob and I are both based in Charleston, South Carolina. Some of you guys know our Midwestern colleagues up north of Milwaukee. They'll be listening in today as well. And today's all about the AI advantage and specific to companies that may roll up to private equity owned or family office owned businesses. So you'll hear us use the word portfolio or portcos a bit, and that's just us talking about the businesses that you guys are in and operating in. So even if you're not owned by a private equity or family office entity, hopefully you'll find today's session productive. So excited to dig in.
Yeah, appreciate that, David. Awesome. So all right, we can go ahead. It's a couple minutes past the hour, so we can go ahead and kick things off. Welcome to the AI Advantage Workshop. Of anything that that we're going to do today, we have one big promise, and the promise out of all of this is that over the next 60 minutes, you're going to know whether or not your company is set up to build an AI advantage, or whether or not you're falling behind. We're going to run through a lot of the sort of foundational work that will tell you about your company, a little bit of self-discovery, and then we're going to move into a workshop that's actually going to help identify what your first AI tool could be and have it identified. So really excited about that. But again, the main promise is that you're going to leave with a diagnosis and a tool that you're going to be able to call out, diagnose, and use. And just in case anyone doesn't have it open already, ahead of this, we had sent out a scorecard. And the scorecard is something that we're going to use later in the second part of this call. But let's go ahead and make sure you just have that open in another tab. We do have that listed in the handout section. So if you go click handouts, there's a link there for the scorecard. If you didn't have it, you can go ahead and bring that up as well. Just keep that handy. We're not going to reference it quite yet, but just want to make sure that everyone has that ready and available.
Yep.
All right, so just want to dive in, really starting out, setting the stage with the problem that we're seeing, right? So the AI mandate is coming from above, and all the companies that we're working with, they're getting AI mandates from their boards, their executive leadership, LPs want it, it's in the deal decks, it's everywhere, right? Everyone is fielding some version of the question, what's your AI plan? The problem and the pattern that keeps showing up is either A, that we don't really have an answer, or B, that we are going in and just kind of winging it and saying, hey, I want to sign up for this AI tool so I can check the box. And really that will accomplish me being, quote, an AI forward company. But that's not how it works. And really when this happens, what we see is that budgets get approved, the tool gets purchased, but then 6 months later, nothing's actually different. Nothing's fundamentally changed in the business, right? And really, there's a root cause to all of this. And most AI failures at the company level, they start with like a main cause, and they have a root cause. And I'm going to go ahead and name this right now. This is called transactional architecture. I'm going to pause here for just a second. I want to make sure everyone is, I just see a couple more people coming in, so let's go ahead. Okay.
Yeah. And as they're coming in, if you guys can drop a comment in chat, just make sure everybody has the right sidebar. We're going to be taking a poll in a bit as well as people are jumping in here. But yeah, I mean, as Jacob set the stage, everybody's getting this AI mandate, and the AI mandate often stops with, well, we should be using Claude more. Okay, well, we need to navigate what security implications AI has for our business. And little times do these progress into, okay, how does the organization use this at scale? How do we deploy tools that are beyond just transactional chat threads across our team? All of that rolls up into what we're digging into. So
yeah, so actually on that note, I'm going to go ahead and open this poll. So I want to get a sense from the room how often you're using AI in your business. Is it every minute, like me and David? Is it every hour, like some of the power users, every day, every week, or none of the above? I want to go ahead and give everyone just a quick moment to answer that. It's funny, you wouldn't believe how just wildly these answers vary just at all levels, right? You meet some execs that are in AI every minute of every day, Eric Zaromsky on the call, right? And then you meet people at the IC level or just starting out who swear they're not going to touch AI and that it's something that they're just not down with, right? So you see a lot of different answers at all different levels, and it looks like we have some pretty close between every hour and every day. I'm going to go ahead and give it just another second. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll. Yeah, it looks like every hour, every day seems to be the winning verdict here. Yeah. So every hour, every day. I'm glad to hear that. I think that's going to make this session resonate a lot more. So, okay, let's talk about some of the two different types of companies that exist, that we see exist at least in the lower middle market, right? One is compounding and one is more transactional. So let's talk about this transactional architecture first and foremost. This is our villain. This is the foundation that a company is built on that doesn't allow it to scale. It creates more headaches and more problems when certain people leave, right? So let's just run through each of these bullet points quickly. So with transactional architecture, the big thing is that activities aren't aligned to strategy. And what do we mean by that? In a transactional company, growth tactics or specific things that you're doing to help scale your business, they're done in a one-off manner, right? So maybe it's how you run your campaign, your go-to-market campaigns. Maybe it's how you build internal processes. All of these things are ad hoc. There's no overarching strategy that connects everything together, and it's really done in a more reactive basis, right? So super dangerous in that regard. Process knowledge lives in one person's head, right? So the problem that we see emerge across all transactional companies is that there's like a main salesperson or a main operator. And if they walk out the door tomorrow, a majority of your institutional knowledge is gonna walk out with them. And that's a huge risk if you're a transactional company. And that's something that we've been working with the X Group to help our organizations move beyond. And a little like the third one here, this symptom, it's a little bit more of a symptom than a root cause. But when you're a transactional company, you don't have the processes built out in a way that's going to allow someone like a new hire to come in, onboard for a week, look at internal documentation and say, hey, like I now know how to fill RFQs, or I know how to take purchase requisitions, right? They have to shadow the top performer for months on end because all of this information lives in their head. And it's a huge problem because it slows both people down, right? So again, not only is it a problem for existing employees, but it's a problem for people that are coming on as new. It doesn't allow them to scale up effectively. And yeah, I've been mentioning this bottom one, when a key person leaves, major pieces of the business leave with them. But this isn't just institutional knowledge. You can think about your top sales guy or saleswoman, right? They may have a book of relationships that they've owned for 20 years that they've brought into the org. And if they leave, that's at the end of the day, quote, their relationships. And if they walk out the door, they're going to lose, you're going to lose those as well. So that's just another risk with this transactional architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Drop a comment if that sounds familiar. It's something that we've seen across the board. And with that, we've come up with this other way of looking at it, like where we want to be in this goal that we want to strive towards, which is known as compounding architecture. So everything that we've just talked about, like activities not aligning to strategy, process living in one person's head, it's pretty much the exact opposite, right? In a compounding company, growth is documented and it's owned by the organization, not a person. Relationships, these are recorded across the org. They're protected, right? And if someone were to leave tomorrow, you could have a relationship manager come in and take that relationship over and they won't miss a beat. Process knowledge is captured and it's queryable. And what I mean by queryable is not only do you have it documented, but it's not spread out across 1,000 different documents in multiple different places. So then you're not able to like find anything, or a new hire isn't able to come and find anything. It's queryable, so you can find that internal documentation. And finally, the business runs without depending on any single person. I've gone over this, but you can go beyond that one key sort of linchpin in your whole organization and make sure that you're set up to have someone come in. So
right.
Yeah. David, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, just to reiterate, this lens is how we look at most businesses in the lower middle market. The transactional aspect of things is not looking at every instance of something compounding in value, obviously. So when we talk about AI, the challenge that we consistently see in our own business and across the businesses we work with is everything is transactional and individual by nature. So even if one employee is using AI for their own work, it's rarely expanding beyond their own individual silo into something that compounds the value of the entire business. And that's what we're trying to get after, is really how do we leverage the things that individuals are getting momentum in within these organizations, bring this together to compound the value of not only their independent work, but the business as a whole. So, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And just to further reiterate, like we're laying this foundation because like building AI, I'm just going to move forward, like building AI on a transactional company's problems accelerate the problems and it makes them more expensive. And let's just talk about a little bit about what that means, right? You're not going to get the real business outcomes that you're looking for when it's built on a transactional sort of foundation. Remember, things aren't queryable. Knowledge lives in one person's head, right? Things aren't documented. So if a sales process, for instance, lives in one person's head, if you bring AI in, it just gives that problem much more reach, right? If I'm a new salesperson coming in and all of the work that I'm trying to do in AI is extracting the thing that lives in someone else's head, A, I'm not going to be able to find it. And then B, this more expensive note, like then each new salesperson that you're going to have to bring on, right? Like every time they try to, hey, what's the sales process here? And then they start working with AI to build out something that they own. Each person is going to look a little bit different. And on the expensive side, in order to do that, you have to burn like tokens. You have to burn like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of tokens doing that. And that's real money that you're spending. At the end of the day, you may feel good that your team's using AI, but if you're not doing it in a compounding way, right? It's everyone's kind of running their own thing. And to be, quite honest, we've experienced a little bit of that at the VX group, and we've been working hard to move on from that. So it's something that we have, a little heartburn over, but it's something that, we've identified not only for our companies, but for ourselves as well. Right. One other example that I want to mention here is like that example of like you bring a new person in and they spend 6 months onboarding and shadowing someone. No AI tool is it's not gonna shorten that, right?
Like, so it's just like a bad hire, right?
It's a bad hire.
You waste time and money if not done properly, and being mindful of is the AI tool a good fit for the business? Is it actually creating or solving, or is it creating a problem? Is it creating a solution or solving a problem, or is it a test in a new way of doing something that may still be better done by a human, right? So really looking at those before you really just start deploying AI across organizations, super important.
Yeah, and that's actually a great segue into this. So the way that we like to have our users go about diagnosing their AI readiness, right, is by asking a main question. Is the workflow we want to AI enable, is it owned by a person today, or is it owned by the organization today? So let's talk about why we propose this question. If a process today, if you decide that you want to, AI, kind of like take AI and have it run this process, if it's owned by a person, you have to not like essentially deploy AI immediately against it. you have to capture that knowledge from the person that owns that process before you build anything else. And that's a huge thing that we've seen, and I'm guilty of this as well. Like going in and just thinking, hey, like I know that, for instance, David, I know that he, runs meetings a certain way. Like let's have AI, build out the agendas, and then I'm over here in a silo trying to figure out exactly what that looks like, and it's something completely detached from what David is actually doing, right? So knowledge capture is a huge thing, especially if the workflow that you've identified that you want to deploy AI against is owned by a specific person. If it's owned by the organization and you feel like it is well documented and you feel like it's something that everyone does in a standardized way, in a way that someone who's new could come on and it's well documented, right? That's something that you can build more quickly against. Of course, there's a different sort of lever that you have to pull and knowledge set that you have to extract, but it's going to be just a little bit more quickly deployable than someone, a process who lives in just one person's head.
Right.
Yeah. So let's just go ahead and keep moving. So with that, there's 6 signals that we generally like to look at, and we've divided them into 2 different columns, right? So the question that we've just asked, it sorts every workflow into one of these 2 columns. And really what it does is if you ask this question today, it allows you to feel like, hey, I can build this right now with minimal additional steps, or I need to pull back, I need to extract knowledge first. And I need to make sure that we're building it thoughtfully rather than just trying to do it quickly. So on the left-hand side, right, you'll hear us say like AI vulnerable and AI ready. And this is where it comes in, right? So when you're AI vulnerable, your workflows are irreplaceable people that run these key workflows. Again, if they left today, you would be out of luck, right? Growth knowledge is undocumented. So it's either, and I'll actually add a little bit onto this, your growth knowledge is undocumented, or it lives in 1,000 different, segmented, fragmented places that you're unable to create a true knowledge base around, right? So that's a huge one. A lot of people will come to us and say, well, it's really well documented, but it lives here and there and there. And another thing that we see is you may have incredible documentation, but that documentation is from 5 years ago. And the way that you do things today looks very, very different than how you did things 5 years ago. And if your documentation is out of date and you're training AI onto it, that actually may be the single most accelerated problem. It's like throwing gasoline onto an already raging fire, right? If all of your knowledge is out of date that you're training AI on. So that's another really kind of big one to look out for. You're also AI vulnerable. The third one here, when growth stalls, when 1 or 2 people leave, it's kind of tied into this first one up here. That's it's just a linchpin leaving. It's going to set you back, right? You're more AI ready, however, when you have processes built out that a new hire can follow easily. And Eric and I went through an exercise actually earlier today that's great for new hires. And it's something that if you have these things built out, you can deploy new people against them, and that's going to make you much more ready. Relationship data lives in a shared system, whether that's a CRM or just a central repository that you can catalog relationships in. That's going to make your AI readiness a lot higher than the alternative. And then finally, leadership can describe the growth model without naming a specific person. The growth model isn't David's going to go and hit up his Rolodex and, once every 6 months, we're going to get a bite. And his Rolodex, by the way, is only 20 people deep, and we've already tapped out 10 of them, right? So that's another huge one. Almost just can't understand how important that is. So what I'm going to do is with this up on the screen, I'm going to start another poll. And I want you guys to be honest with yourselves. These polls are anonymous. They don't say, you don't see who's saying what. But if you had to say, looking at this spectrum, if you had to evaluate yourself and your company, would you say today that your company is mostly vulnerable on the vulnerable side of things or on the ready side of things? I'll give you just a second to answer. And I won't call you out for lying if you say mostly ready. I'll actually be curious who thinks that and why they think that. In between, mostly ready. Nice. Give it just another second. Mostly ready, we have 2. If there's anyone from the VX group on, I hope that's from us. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna give it just another second. In between. All right, so it looks like we have 4 for in between and 2 mostly ready. Is there anyone who wants to explain why they feel like their company is mostly ready? I would love to hear.
Yeah, I would love to see something in chat on the mostly ready and in between. Eric says, how can AI help a team move from vulnerable to ready? While other people put things in chat, Jacob, how can AI really progress a team from vulnerable into that ready category?
Yeah, I think AI, like if you use it and use it diagnostically, I think it could be an accelerant to finding out in what ways you're vulnerable, right? The best way that I found that I use AI to diagnose my existing gaps is I just ask it to, well, what I do is I essentially like create the environment connected to the systems in which I'm going to pull information from. And then before I start anything, I'm like, hey, like if you're evaluating this tech stack or the documentation that you have access to, where are my gaps and why do you feel like those are gaps? I think a lot of times we try to force the issue with AI and try to tell it too much when at the end of the day, you're going to move a lot faster if you ask it to diagnose the problem in the way that it's going to be able to solve it. Like that allows you to get ahead a lot more quickly rather than trying to rack your brain, figure out exactly where your shortcomings are. When I start a new process, that's my favorite thing to do. And I've done that for, when I first came on about 2 months ago, we had a huge product marketing gap, right? But I didn't know that. And as part of my own onboarding, I said, hey, our Claude assistant's named Victor, Eric named it Victor. Hey, Victor, can you talk to me a little bit about the way that we bring our product to market? The VX Group brings this product to market. And it basically was like, while we have things, it's not abundantly crystallized, and it's not one of our strong suits. So we work together to fix that. So that was just an example.
Right. A very tactical example of Eric's question, how AI can help a team move forward, is really in team stand-ups or any kind of weekly or recurring team meeting, or even a project that has recurring meetings, and making sure that there's a note taker in the room, that you can build a body of evidence around a common theme that you can query and understand, whether it's on an organizational level or a project level. Where are the gaps in the resources, the people, the workflow itself. So again, a very, very kind of ground level example there, but that's really helped us understand the business. Everything that we've ever said is queryable at the VX Group. Anything we've ever said January 1, 2026. So, but yeah, it's really important, especially being in your 40s now. You can forget things. So the paper trail is super valuable to help us on this journey.
Totally. Well, cool. I appreciate everyone, answering the poll. And now that you have evaluated and kind of know where you stand on the spectrum, the next slide that I'm going to get into, this goes really beyond the foundation and into the implementation, and is a massive way that we've seen companies shoot themselves in the foot when going and implementing AI solutions. So let's talk about that a little bit. So 2 ways AI implementation fails. One on the left-hand side you'll see is underdoing it, and the next is overdoing it. So a lot of companies that aren't building on the right foundation fall on one end of the spectrum because they don't have the right framework to land in this happy medium of doing it the right and thoughtful way. Either it's a knee-jerk reaction that tries to come quickly, or it's a knee-jerk reaction that is significantly overinvested, both time, people, resources, money, and it's totally overdoing it, right? So just an example quickly of underdoing it, right? This is like you say, hey, the directive comes from one of the operating partners in your firm, or a board member, and it's like, hey, what are we doing to implement AI, or what's our AI plan? And if you say, hey, let me think about that, let's get rolling on something, and then all of a sudden you sign up for a max plan on Claude or whatever, right? And you say, hey, look, we have access to AI now. We're AI forward. You build a report, you use it as a chatbot, right? And there's not real buy-in from the team because not everyone's going to be totally bought in. They're not going to know what they should be using it for. They're not really understanding the main use cases from that, right? It gets shelved because it can't really point to an actual business result because no one's used it enough and used it in a way that builds on the foundation to then solve real problems and generate real outcomes. On the other side is this overdoing it. So this is when we go into total panic, freak out mode across the board, bring in our CFO, talk about budget allocation, right? we go through and evaluate 8 different, let's just call it, AI-powered RFP providers. And all of a sudden, we're staring down the barrel of a 6-figure investment. But again, it's expensive investment. So, hey, we must be doing at least on the right track. If we're paying this, we should be seeing returns, right? Next thing you know, you're 8 months in working with your onboarding specialists and you haven't produced anything, right? The tool's unused, it sits there, it's being built. The license is going to renew by the time 8 months happens. Generally, you're on yearly billing. You have 4 months to show real return on like a 6-figure investment. And that's like the worst position to be in. And really a lot of time we see companies fall into like one of these 2 buckets. I mean, drop it in the chat if you feel like you've been, if you feel like you're in one of these buckets. Love to hear it and love to hear how you're like, working through it right now. But really the real point of this is that, I was talking with Eric about this yesterday. He made a great point. I'm not going to take credit for this. Getting one great result by yourself as an AI operator working in Claude at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday night, in a silo, building something amazing, like that result is easy to get. The problem is getting the entire team to repeat every single week the processes and the AI workflows, the actual work that's going to become consistent and turn your dollars into dollars on the P&L, right? Like that's a huge thing. Like getting the team bought in, working consistently, and having that output show up as dollars on the P&L is the single hardest thing to do in AI, but that's the goal that every leader should be setting for themselves, right? And the way that we put it more simply is you build AI as a capability that you truly, as a team and as an org, own versus something that you rent. David, do you want to comment on that at all? Because I know we've got
and we're gonna get into something that we've coined the chassis, because there is it's still the Wild West out there, right? And we're feeding these models information about our business that like I said about recording every word we've said at the VX group, right? Arguably that could be overdoing it, feeding a specific model, but getting control over this is what we recommend as one of the foundational elements of a longer term AI strategy. So this quote that Jacob put on the screen here, I mean, at the end of this, we want what will the company have that it doesn't have today, and who owns it is a fundamental question for anything that you're doing with these tools. Because at the end of the day, it's still technology, it's still software, right? So it's just like when you decided to bring Salesforce into your business. It's a similar decision. What problem are we solving? Or are we just trying to light $30,000 a year on fire? Because that's the new hot thing, right? So really making sure, especially in the lower middle market, making sure we're doing a pragmatic implementation of whatever technology we're making a decision on, and not just throwing more white noise and more distraction into the business.
Yeah, and we have, David, that was great. And just on that note, we have several manufacturing companies in the room, and just the analogy to think, you can think about this, right? You don't get return from installing a new machine or new equipment, but what you do get a return on is when the whole team understands how to use it, they know exactly what it's for, and they're running it consistently every single day without someone standing over their shoulder telling them, this is how you do it, this is how you don't do it, right? That's the analogy that we like to use here. So,
right.
For the manufacturers in the room, just think about it more in that machine type analogy.
Right. Yep.
So let's keep rolling ahead. So there's a path that exists to answer this question. At the end of the day, right, you have to think about it in 3 separate parts. How do you actually solve this scalability and repeatability problem? And the way that we've seen it is through 3 separate phases. First is inspire. We call it inspire. This is leadership alignment around AI. So answering the question, is it something a person owns, or is it something the company owns? Thinking about the machine analogy that way, are we vulnerable or are we ready, right? So leadership comes together, they build that alignment, and then they also discover some of the main use cases that AI is going to be applied towards, right? And knowing that the alignment's there and knowing that the use case has been identified, that's going to be enough to inspire the team. And it's up to the leadership team to communicate this effectively to the wider group. But really, that's how you inspire the team to be bought into this. after you've generated that inspiration and you've thought about like different use cases and how you're going to apply the AI, that's when you're going to want to move into this second phase. Okay, let's go actually build the thing. And building it doesn't mean just immediately going and deploying AI saying, I want this and building it. What it means is thinking about where you land on that spectrum of, hey, we have all of this knowledge documented, or it lives in one person's head and we have to extract that. So you start there. And then once you've identified kind of which end of that spectrum you're on, you then go and build those tools so they can go live in production. And this is where that notion of the chassis that David's going to talk about in just a little bit, this is where that notion of the chassis comes into play. And you know what, David, I have my own explanation of the chassis. Would you mind we can pause here and just talk about what the chassis is and
right.
how it's built?
Yeah, think of the chassis as the garage for the things that you're parking within it, right? It's got a window, it's got the garage door, it's got some fundamental electricity, and it really serves as the location for the AI tools that you build and deploy into the business. It could be as basic as a dashboard goes into the chassis, or it could be a specific workflow integrating AI agents. But the chassis really is your scaffolding around all the things that your business owns. And then you can swap out things like large language models as the Wild West continues over the next few years. But having a place, just like you would build architect a CRM, building a place to house the things that you are going to build these AI tools for your business into something that you control and you own is highly, highly recommended. And obviously we're doing that for a lot of the lower mid-market companies that we're working with.
Yeah, the cool thing about the chassis is the way like it's built. If you think about it, that garage metaphor, right? Each garage with the stalls that David was talking about, like each stall can have its own level of complexity or workflows that are built into those like stalls, right? So if you think about it in the garage, you could have a Toyota Corolla in one stall that's very good at a very simple output, right? But then in this other stall across the way, you could have an M3, a BMW M3 or an Audi R8, whatever, right? Like you have this
Right.
supercar in this other stall that's meant for extremely complex business processes, right?
Right.
So, and this is generally like business processes that include AI or don't include AI. And what it does is the chassis builds off of all of this and builds it into like a real piece of software rather than just like, another freaking
Right.
spreadsheet that someone's doing,
Yeah.
right? And that's what it's going to, really going to make it repeatable.
Yeah, and just to continue the analogy, I mean, it just admittedly, the chassis for the VX group has something in the corner that has a blanket thrown over it. It was something that we built months ago that still has value, but it's dormant right now as we build these other things. So it really is an organized and structured way to house all the things you're building, rather, because the alternative is it's everywhere, right? And nobody really has this single destination of how you're building these things.
Yep. Awesome. And then on this grow, I want to spend a moment here just talking about grow. So the cool thing about the chassis and like when you build it this way is that everything builds on itself and it compounds back to the compounding architecture, becomes cheaper, becomes faster to build. But most importantly, what the chassis is designed to do is it's designed to build either workflows or things or products that off-the-shelf AI like Claude or ChatGPT that they just can't do, right? With Claude or ChatGPT, you can do things like you could have a repeatable quoting process, right? Like you could build a template and just have someone fill it in. And that's fine. That's a great use case. And that's a Corolla use case that off-the-shelf AI could accommodate. On the other side, though, that M3, R8, that more complex one, what Claude and ChatGPT off the shelf can't do is work to quote millions of dollars of work across like dozens of estimators or business lines, right? And that's what the chassis is for. So just remember, a lot of the work can be done off the shelf, but there are some complex, unique to your business across multiple teams and across multiple stakeholders that you're just not going to get from off the shelf AI. So let's just go ahead and David, anything else you want to add there?
Yeah, no, we're going to get into it.
All right, cool. I hate talking in like abstract terms. So I promise you that the second half of this, I'm 4 minutes behind, my apologies. The second half of this, now that we've set the stage, I want to go into more of this workshop. So can everyone take a moment, drop in the chat when you have your scorecard ready? It's in the handout section. It's also a PDF that was sent out ahead of time, but can you just drop in the chat, give me a thumbs up when you have your scorecard ready? It should look a lot like this. Tell me, can you guys see it?
And you sent it out prior, right? And it's
Send it
also
out
in the
prior.
handout section.
Yeah.
And
I'll wait till I get 1 or 2 thumbs up. Craig, ready? Appreciate you, man.
Eric. I'll speak to that as everybody gets their tool ready. Eric, how important is the data quality as it relates to working with? Oh yeah, all right. So to me, I mean, this is a great question. How important is data quality as it relates to working with AI? And then secondarily, Jacob, how was your experience with the QuickBooks data? Right. So we have found in our business, obviously structured data is very important, but as an example of one of the things that we did in Q1 is we had our Salesforce instance renewing that we used across clients to house a good amount of relationship data, and the data would come out in structured ways. But the benefit of AI is just generally describing how you want to relate this information to other information, say out of QuickBooks or out of a different CRM system. So data quality is important, but the days of really hard coding specific relationships between the data is largely gone. And I think that's one of the more beautiful things that we found in our business, because we have data everywhere, and QuickBooks data is inherently very difficult to work with, but we can describe what we want to do, and it accomplishes the goal. So yeah. All right, everybody have that tool ready?
Cool. I'm going to go ahead jump here. So in the scorecard, there are 3 sections, and I'm just going to kind of run through each of them, and then I'll bring the scorecard back up and give you an example of how we actually applied this at the VX Group for ourselves. So this first section on the top here, you're going to see number 1, inventory, diagnose, and score. So what we're going to do here is, when you think about the workflows that exist today in your company, think about the 2 to 3 that are the most expensive, the most broken, or the most dependent on a single person. And for each of those, on one line, write those down in your scorecard. And just as an example, this could be something, that could be ranged from customer relation workflows, product knowledge workflows within the company, reporting workflows that are broken and are costing you, costing you thousands of dollars because you can't accurately, report out on financials, right? Sales handoffs, that's another one. Think about like the 2 to 3 that are your most broken and most single person dependent. And let's go ahead and list those on the scorecard. I'm going to give everyone just a minute. And while we're doing that, because I know everyone thinks better when they're listening to me talk over their thoughts, I'm going to explain just quickly what we did at the VX Group for ourselves when we were going through the same exercise. So we saw that there were a few different workflows that were broken. Number 1 for us was our long-term nurture sort of workflow. Number 2 was the unified way that we talk about ourselves in market. That was number 2. And number 3 was actually a production engine of getting, once we had those things figured out, like, how do we now, okay, we have the viewpoint, we have the ways of thinking, how do we actually get those to market, right? So those 3 workflows for us, those were the most expensive in opportunity costs that we were missing. They were also expensive, costing the business real money, because everyone's trying to search Claude to find the same answer for something, and it didn't exist, and we're burning tokens, right? So it's expensive. So just thinking about how we evaluated it, that was another way. And for instance, like the go-to-market workflow today, who owns it? It relies on a single person, and that's me, and that's not scalable, right? So that's another problem that we had identified, right off the bat. So think about that. Now, the second part of this inventory section, you'll see here on the scorecard, you have this business impact, structural readiness, and first tool column. So as you're working through those, think about each of those workflows and then run them through the diagnostic question. Number 1, owned by a person, owned by the company, and then score its impact today across 2 different lines. First is going to be business impact. So this broken, outdated, relying on a single person process, what's the impact on business? From a 1 to 5, a 5 is that revenue is heavily impacted by this process being broken. So 1 to 5. And on structural readiness, think about that problem that you have. And if someone were to come in today to take over that problem, what level, or come in today, both new or from your within your company, took that process over, like how ready would that be for that person to come in and take it over? Just because it's broken in some ways doesn't mean it's unassumable and no one else can come in and take it over. Just keep that in mind, right? So think about the structural readiness of these. I'm going to give just another second on that. Okay. So as we're doing that, you're going to notice down below, you're going to have a section 2 that's, it says read your scores, and there's 4 different boxes. The quadrant didn't look good on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, but it looks good here, so we're gonna run through it this way. Now that we've outlined and diagnosed all of our different workflows, here's how to read the quadrant. So the high impact plus high readiness, that's what's called the build zone, right? That's this upper right-hand side. It impacts your business. The readiness is there, right? It's just we need to deploy something against it. That's the build zone. Low impact plus, low readiness and high impact, that's capture first, right? A lot of impact, but the readiness is low. It lives in one person's head, right? It's not ready for someone to come in and take it over. We have to capture it, so we're going to capture that first. On the bottom left-hand side is low structural readiness and low impact, meaning don't spend your money here, right? It's not something that's worth, at least in this first round of AI deployment. Don't touch it. The one on the bottom right-hand side later, it's ready as far as structural readiness. Someone can come in and take it over, but the business impact isn't high enough to justify an investment in deploying AI against that specific workflow. So again, back here, right, that's how you read your scores. So I'm going to give everyone just another minute to go through and complete sections 1 and then read it through the lens of number 2. Give that just a second. And guys, feel free in the chat if you do have any questions about how we've done this or how to read any part of this scorecard. Please drop it in the chat. We will get those answered for you right away as you're going through this. Give it just another second.
I know some attendees have done this internally using specific tools, and if there's anything that you've identified in the past that you're already progressing in the organization, please share. But yeah, this is regardless of how you collect this, really understanding the impact of the business from a profitability revenue standpoint, and then obviously going to this rationale line, which is a great output.
Yep. Okay, as we're wrapping this up, I'm going to give us some more time. We can keep going, but here's what at the end, section number 3. This is where we actually get into identifying the first tool that we can build and deploy AI against in the company. So what's going to happen is when you have the tool, the workflow, and the person identified, you're not going to have this rationale. We will build the tool so that the workflow no longer depends on the person. So here's an example again of that one that I was mentioning earlier from our end. I'm actually going to use the product knowledge one, right? I'm going to use something that Eric built. We will build the VX internal knowledge base so that understanding who we are and what we do and being able to communicate that no longer depends on Eric Zaromsky and David Tisdale. That's one. Here's another example. We will build the content engine so that bringing our own content to appear in search engines and AEO and GEO, which is AI search, no longer depends on Jacob, on me, right? We're building that out today. We will build a quoting tool so that getting quotes out no longer depends on David.
We will build a webinar follow-up tool so that the post-production of webinars and distribution to our attendees no longer depends on Jacob.
Yep. Cool. So anyone want to drop in the chat what they've identified? I don't know. I feel like Craig's been on a roll. I may call on him. I'm not sure yet, but Craig, you've been great, man. Anyone have anything they want to drop in the chat? If not, we can go ahead and keep rolling.
Let's keep going.
Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and keep going. So what this all leads into, and like one big sort of pattern that we've been finding, is that a lot of the first tool, like when we bring our clients through this first tool exercise, everything leads back to this huge knowledge gap, right? This huge institutional knowledge gap. This problem that exists in our business today exists because we don't have the institutional knowledge documented, systematized, and accessible to everyone in the company, right? The example that I just used first was VX, like for lack of a better term, because I come from tech, I'm going to say it this way: VX Group product marketing and brand marketing, right? That was a gap, and that was a knowledge gap because it wasn't documented, right? And what does it really cost? It's expensive, and it doesn't show up as a direct cost, but it shows up in a couple different ways. Number one, it's going to come in this sort of like institutional knowledge cost. So onboarding time, consistency, gaps in your work, right? All of these things add up to real revenue loss, right? So what we've done is we've kind of, not to just hard sell everyone on this call, but what we've done is we've developed in this AI readiness sort of like two tangential ways of looking at this, sort of this Echo lens and the Lore lens. Echo talks about this individual knowledge capture, where that knowledge relies on one person in particular. And then second, I'm going to move this tab. And then second is this Lore, where it's more organizational, and it relies on you to more aggregate rather than extract, right? That's a good way to look at it. Most institutional knowledge problems come from either extraction problems or aggregation problems. And that's like a real principal thing to think about, okay? David, anything you want to add here onto this?
Nope.
Okay, I'm going to then, at that point, I'm going to go ahead and release our last poll here. So I'm going to go ahead and start this poll. So how much of your company's processes today do you feel like exists only in someone or very few people's heads? I'm going to give just the group a second here to answer. What do you think, David? I think I'm going to say some. Oh yeah, we just got one for some.
Yeah.
Remember, pure honesty. Be as brutally honest with yourself. It's only going to help you. Most of it, nice. Some, but manageable. I'm surprised we didn't get almost none. Most people like to overstate their own capabilities, right? Basically all of it, none. Interesting. So we're living more in the middle here. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll. So we had 3 and 1, kind of living right in that middle. That's really good. Just again, when you're thinking about how to diagnose institutional knowledge, like just come back to that question over and over. So with that, this is where the AI Accelerator program comes in. And what the AI Accelerator is it's a program that we've built out where essentially, Eric, feel free to jump in the chat if I talk about this in the wrong way at all. David, you too. But basically what it does is it's a 90-day program to help your company not only diagnose where the AI shortcomings are, but to essentially give you like a list, a ranked use case of a short list of the most pressing workflows that AI can be deployed against. Yep. We build the tool with you. And over the course of that first 3 to 4 months, we actually give you a tool live in production that's built on that chassis. So you own it. You're not renting it. You own this AI product. It's built in your environment, and it's yours to keep, right? Yep. So therefore, it's called the Accelerator program because this is step 1. Everything that you do after it, every AI workflow, every AI process that you build on top of this initial sort of 90-day, post 90-day product, it will scale faster. You can add more complexity to it, but you have that foundation that you own to build that AI that AI workflow set off of. David, yep. Anything you want to add in on?
Yeah, absolutely. So to be clear, it's a tool that solves a specific business problem, like the ones that you've written down in the scorecard today. And that tool is housed within what we're describing as the chassis, which is an environment under your control connected to your data. So it is a tool that solves a very specific business case, specific to your business, within a place that your team can access and under your control, where you can pull in additional AI tools in the future. And obviously, we've seen great success with this, and it really shows those lower middle market business leaders and their ownership groups the future of how you can slot these applications into a business to solve real world problems.
Yep, awesome. Yeah, that's great. And just a quick breakdown. This is $7,500 per month, 3-month commitments, 90 days gets you started, and what you build after that is limitless, right, Eric? That's not any false advertising at all, I promise. But anyway, you get the point. 7,500, 3 months, value delivered, and you're going to get something, that you own. One other thing, for the funds that we have on this call, I just want to call this out. Like, this is a true portfolio multiplier in the what I feel like true sense of the word. So with one engagement, you're going to have a chassis that becomes the playbook for your next portfolio company. So like what you can do is you can it sets the stage to run it across 5, 10 companies. And every time that you do this, the cost incrementally drops because you're building out this compounding system. So if you're evaluating something like this at the fund level, I know that we have some CEOs on the call of individual companies, manufacturing companies. We also have some portfolio operators on this call as well. If you're thinking about this at the fund level, we would love to talk to you about that, because that's sort of this next iteration of things, right? So again, bring us your scorecard. This is what you just went through, by the way. That's like step 1 of an actual AI accelerator program, where we go through and help you identify and give you that ranked shortlist of workflows. So you've already started, you already have step 1 already complete. And quite honestly, that makes our job a little bit easier and can help you see value more quickly. So with that, I will pause here, and just, if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. While we're dropping questions in, David, why don't we just kind of run through some of these questions together, if that's cool? So if we're a company that really doesn't have technical staff, not like, I don't have a developer in house. What does that look like for me? What does that look like?
Yeah, so the chassis itself is done for you. So it really is straightforward and honestly more user friendly than most CRM systems. So it really is your hub, the garage, as it were, for people to participate and access these apps. It is built on tools that, if you do want to take things further, with or without us, it is built on a pretty common framework for other developers to come into. But the interface itself, the chassis itself, is done for you, and really no technical or development expertise is needed.
Perfect. I'm going to drop just one more question. So David, if you're a principal, how do you frame this for the board? Like, what are you saying to the board to make them buy into this notion?
Right. Well, I mean, one, it adds value to the business. It addresses workflows, and it addresses processes that are tied to individuals that introduce risk to the business. And you're proactively addressing that in building something that takes care of that process, tethered to that individual human, while adding value to the business with something that you can slot in additional workflows into. So again, a lot of what we're seeing is boards kind of mandating or strongly suggesting that portcos really do this. And you have the opportunity, if you are one of the leaders at the companies, to be proactive and recommend this upward through the board. And we've seen very little resistance. Obviously, there's questions of what that looks like, but it is, again, there to add value to the business, and that's probably the most important thing there.
Craig, great question. What are the technical skills or technical level required to add tools to the chassis once it's deployed?
Yeah, I mean, that could be the way I think of this, Craig, is you can, within your chassis, you can build ways to enable layman's to plug in layman level applications, as it were. Because if that is a goal, and I've seen some of the workflows and the processes that your company has logged there, if some of that is enabling the team or non-technical team members to participate in building those things, that can be part of within the chassis. And Eric, we may hang up here, and he says I misspoke, but that's the way I look at it. The chassis is the scaffolding that goes around, and then again, within that, we can enable lower tech individuals to help with building. But yeah.
Awesome. All right, great. So again, I know we're coming up on time. We just have about 5 minutes here. Just remember transactional compounding architecture. Those are that sort of way of looking at your business is a huge takeaway. Understanding how to become AI vulnerable. If you're AI vulnerable and how to become AI ready. And then finally, taking your scorecard, really evaluating against your most expensive workflows that you need to deploy AI against today, your most broken lives in one person's head. Those are the three main takeaways. And we're going to share this recording out. We'll also drop the deck in a follow-up email as well, and the scorecard you guys have, but I'll also include that template in the follow-up email as well. But really the next step for you guys, if you want to continue this conversation, let's reach out to us directly. We would love to have a 30-minute, hour-long conversation. Actually, Eric has now mandated that we run 75-minute calls because no call really just takes an hour. It always runs over just a little bit. So if you want to have a 75-minute call with us, please reach out. We'll tell you honestly whether this is going to be, like a realistic, sort of workflow to build in the first 90 days. We'll capture the situations that, you're currently facing and then figure out a roadmap on how to move forward. So again, I just want to thank everyone for coming out today. It's been a great session. David, thank you for hopping on. And yeah. I'm going to shout out Craig. Great questions today, man. I appreciate you coming ready. And thanks everyone who came. It was a great session and looking forward to hearing from everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Great job, Jacob. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. See ya.